So now the topic is Karma Yoga. We saw last week. So, the first aspect of Karma Yoga is what is the role of karma in my life? So that means initially we think that karma, through karma, whatever I get, whether it is security or pleasure, is an end in my life. Now, what does the person understand? Moksha is the end in your life and karma is for self-growth. So this is what the placement of karma. If this is not very clear, then what? Bahu Shakha Tyadantascha. You just don't know what you are doing karma for and then you have no focus. Right? So that is the first aspect of Karma Yoga. The second aspect of Karma Yoga, if you want to use karma for your growth, then how do you use it? Right? The first aspect is to know what I have a choice over and what I don't have a choice over. Okay? So here, then the verse was Karmani eva adhikaranate. You have a choice over action, but not over the result of the action. Right? Once that is very clear, then what happens is, okay, how now do I use my choice? Right? That is the third question. That is answered in the next verse. We will see that. Yogastat kuru karmani saddham tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Repeat after me. Yogastat kuru karmani
Yogastat kuru karmani
Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya
Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya
Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva
Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva
Samatvam yoga uchyate.
Samatvam yoga uchyate.
Now this verse is actually talking about when I receive the result in form of situations. Okay? What should be my response? But how do I use my free will, my choice? That is in the next verse. So we will do both of them. So we will chant the next verse also. Vritti yukto jahadika Ube sukrita dushkrute Tasmat yoga nirujyasva Yoga karma sukaushalam. Okay. So now there are two things that I need to do. If I can do these two things, I can say I am successful in my life. One is if I can make good choices about the result of actions, and the second is what when situations arise in my life, I can what respond to them with a certain amount of equanimity, with certain conclusion. Okay? So these two things if I can do, show me a third problem in life. Because life is nothing about making choices of how to act and responding to situations. What else is there? Tell me. If you can do these two things well, what is the third thing you need to learn? Tell me.
Accept the result.
Exactly. So that means that is a response to your situation.
Acceptance.
So now we are going to learn how to do these two things, okay, through Karma Yoga. Because if you learn how to do these two things, you can say, nothing, let anything happen to me. I know how to use my free will and make the right choices, and I also know how to respond to situations with a certain clarity. Okay? Then you are not afraid. Right? Now, so these two verses are critical verses, because if you really understand these two verses, you have key to day-to-day living. So let's first see verse 50, where he says, Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Okay? So what makes karma into a yoga? It is karmasu kaushalam. When I perform any action, what? I have a choice and I use that faculty of choice. Kaushala means what? With wisdom. Okay? Now, what exactly is using the faculty of free will with certain amount of wisdom? Okay? Let's analyze our life. We saw it previously. Okay? You engage in karma because you want to get something. Okay? Now, there is nothing wrong in getting something. You have different desires and you can engage in the world to fulfill those desires. That's the most natural way to live. Okay? Now, what happens is, these desires are of two types. One is what we call raga and the other one is dvesha. Desire to get what I want is called raga, desire to avoid what I don't want is called dvesha. Right? So that means your whole life is lived trying to get what you want and getting rid of what you don't want. Raga and dvesha. Now, if these ragas and dveshas, you try your best to get whatever you want, okay? That is something which is very healthy, because your whole life, the success is that you try your best to get what you want. Okay? But if what you desire is sometimes it is occupying such an important position in your life that you are willing to sacrifice dharma, ethics, then what is your choice? That is what shows how mature you are. If you are driven by the desire, because that desire is so important to you that you are willing to sacrifice dharma, then what? You don't have that much maturity. Right? Because what is dharma? Last time we saw that samanya dharma, the universal ethical value, is something which is there. In Sanskrit we call it law of dharma. It is part, just as there are laws of gravity, thermodynamics, all these different laws which govern the universe. Right? There is a law which governs the universe, which governs transactions. Right? And that is law of dharma. And that, why can I say that it is a law? Because every human mind, whoever has the free will to make choices, that person understands what is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. That's why you call it universal, because it is inbuilt in a human psyche. Okay? That understanding or appreciation of law of dharma is inbuilt in human psyche. Sometimes in English we use a word called conscience for that. Okay? But here what we are saying is that there is a law and you have an intuitive understanding of that law. Right? Now, if that law you understand does not mean that you always follow the law. Okay? Why if you understand what is the right thing to do and what is to be avoided, why is it so difficult for people to follow it?
I desire.
Exactly. So that means this raga and dvesha has so much power over me. Right? So that means they take over my capacity to judge. So that means when I have to make a choice, that choice is based on what? Is it based on wisdom of what I understand to be right or wrong, or is it based on the power of that desire?
Yeah, the power of the desire.
The power of the desire. Okay? So that means what? If my faculty of choice gets overwhelmed by the power of desire, where I am willing to what? Disregard dharma, then what? This is something that means you are not mature.
If I may ask you a question.
Yes.
So you saying the law of dharma
Yes.
is self-evident to everybody,
Yes.
irrespective of his maturity level. He knows that he doesn't want to be hurt, so does every other individual who doesn't want to be hurt. But our desire overruns our capacity and our thinking faculty.
Absolutely. Exactly to the point. Yes. Right? So that means now, Raji, what happens is something which is very interesting, right? Because if you are getting overwhelmed by desire, it's not a one-time thing. Okay? So you make one choice. Now that gives you a feeling that last time we saw, what is the cost of going against dharma? The cost is you have guilt. Right? This is again the universe showing you that you have actually not followed what you want, the law. Right? So therefore guilt, fear of being caught, okay? Low self-esteem because you know what is the right thing to do and you haven't done it. Then suspicion, because if you can do it, in your vision others can also do it. Right? Then that suspicion it grows into a generalized worldview, and that is, I can't trust anybody. Okay? Now imagine if your mind is fraught with all these things which are not very tangible. Right? When somebody looks at you, nobody knows how much guilt you are carrying, how much fear you are carrying, what is your self-esteem, right? What is your outlook of the world? People only see what car you drive, where you live, right? So it seems to you that the person is getting away with whatever the person is doing because what you look at is what?
It's the outside.
Yeah, is the outside. Right? So this is where once you understand that the minute you go against the laws, there are huge costs. And those are maybe intangible, but they are very real. Okay? Once you know that, then you follow dharma for whose sake? For your own sake. So please, if you understand that I am following dharma for my own sake, one would never make the statement, goodness doesn't pay in this world. Goodness doesn't pay in this world is a statement made when what? I don't understand that there are laws which are infallible in nature. I think that the universe is just a dumb universe and I just do everything out of my goodness and what reward do I get? And the people who don't follow, they get ahead. This particular understanding that you have of the world, you have to change. Because as long as the understanding remains that whenever I am a good human being, I will suffer. Who wants to suffer? Tell me. The time is not close where that you will sacrifice. Right? Because nobody wants to be a sufferer. You have to change and you say that there are intrinsic rewards for being honest. They may not be, yes, sometimes, but even the fact that you can be free from guilt, that itself is a huge reward. Free from fear, okay? That you can have a good self-esteem, that you can trust the world. Right? All these are rewards. Please don't think that they are huge rewards. Pay attention to these rewards. Your whole outlook of life will change. Okay? This is what is maturity. So this is where you use karma. You can go along with your desire until what? What is a check? Whether you are in harmony with universal values or not. If you are in harmony with universal values, go ahead and have desires. There is nothing wrong. Desire is a capacity which is given to human being. Ichcha is a Shakti. Don't look upon desire as your enemy, because everything that you have done in your life, all the creativity that you have shown, all the accomplishments that people have made, what is the driving force of that? Desires. Right? Either you can use it to unleash all your powers and creativity and accomplish amazing things, or if you don't manage the desires, and if the desires start managing you and you disregard dharma, then what happens? You have to pay the price. So here, the whole Gita is extremely practical and extremely objective.
But you know what is very difficult? Like today, our children are saying from the time they're young, a small thing like, oh, these other people cheat and they wax the paper. Now
Yeah.
today, a child is saying it from there.
Yes.
So then, how do you know, it's so
So you
difficult
have to explain to them.
Yes.
That's the thing, Generally, we tell them to be like this, but we don't show them why. Okay? So this is why one has to engage. If you actually, it's amazing. Every time we talk about value of values, your loss, your personal loss, what happens? You're looking at a very short-term gain, and the loss is a long-term, and you just totally overlook that, and then you end up being the loser. If you make the child understand that, you've done one of the biggest things in this world, because the child is ethical for oneself. And once one is ethical and one understands why, and one does not see oneself as a loser, then what? The person will be an honest, naturally honest person with good self-esteem. Okay? And responsible in this world and will take world as a place where there is an opportunity, not as a place which is,
But it's very hard to make kids like now they have to do in the IB, they have to do projects. Some people are letting the kids pay 25,000-30,000 to do the project from outside. And the mark is 50% of your grade marks. So you know what I never do, but everyone does. I said, you know what, let them do.
Yeah.
At least this is
I
your
want
work.
to lecture on that for the kids.
Yeah, it's so difficult with the kids because you get so much pressure there to get good grades to go to good university. And these kids are going and copying in the SAT exam and landing up with a what is it? And our kids are like everyone copies. And I was like, I like to that.
There's a center, Anjuman Islam, where wholesale copy, so she wants to do that.
I mean, the kids are messaging the teacher on the phone for the answers. A boy who fails has got 2,400.
Well, you have to give the example.
No, but fear is also a good thing. Whenever this happens, it's happened with our kids that they've cheated and they've got caught.
Yeah,
And they've seen the results, so that's fear in other people that if you do this wrong, this is what happens. Even if it's that 1%
That's
chance
not
of
healthy way to
getting
make them
caught.
scared,
Not scared, but they have to know that this is what will happen if
I always
cheat.
tell my daughter, okay, you cheat, you get a good university. What's the point? You can't cope there. How silly, you'll be sent back. Isn't that worse? I always tell her, how silly. Let him cheat. I said, let him pay for it. Because she tells me, everyone is paying, but you don't let me. I said, I never will. It's better you get whatever you can with your own marks.
Excellent.
But she doesn't, but everyone pays. They get good grades. I said, let them.
Let them.
I mean, in life, you can't keep paying your way through. No?
Absolutely.
You have to just, I always say, but I don't know how much she understands, but she keeps on telling me this.
No, but you're right.
The only mother, everyone pays.
So like,
If you have a lecture on that for the kids, it would be great.
I know whenever I talk about value of values, everybody says, can you teach our kids?
We need to learn. Maybe if they see us practicing
Yes, exactly.
what we are talking about, I'm sure we also make so many compromises. If we can avoid those, that will be an automatic.
Absolutely.
In your
Because
business,
the kids
everyone
grow
pays
up,
their
they are so interested. They are so
For their
interested.
job.
Right?
You talk something and you do something else. You see you doing something else.
You are caught at the signal. It's the same
Why you go
situation.
to government
And you
office
are
and
you
go
are
to
we are
the
used to
policeman
basis
also.
are faced with everyone. We keep giving the cop ना बिछाने तुम्हारा जल्दी है and we'll say अच्छा license के साथ. So I mean her kids at their level are facing it. We are also facing it. Whatever stage you will face this, then it becomes like okay
When
कितना
the kid
दिया.
sees you doing
You
that, you
justify
will
it. You will justify
What are you
that
talking
थोड़ा
about?
I was getting
You do it yourself.
Come back to the center and
You see, exactly. See, our whole teaching about dharma is not rule based. We are not saying you should do this and you should not do that. Okay? That everybody knows anything. Okay?
as long as
What
you
we
realize the
are-
aberrations
Exactly.
and come back.
So if I want you to do what one should do, what I have to show you why is it good for you. Only when you understand that it is good for me, doing good is good for me, then you do it and you do it naturally. If you do good for what obliging the society or somebody else, a time will come very fast for that you sacrifice. But if you do good for your own sake, then what? That is your prime interest. So that's what we call growth. Growth means you understand that. Okay? So that means in karma you use dharma. Okay? So that choice, the faculty of choice that you have, you incorporate samanya dharma into it. And you see yourself as a loser if you do not incorporate that. Now, the Vedic vision of dharma is a little bit more refined than just saying that there is a universal value. Why? Okay? Because anybody can ask this question that one of the rules is, as Rajiv says, don't hurt others, right? So this is called ahimsa. Now, anybody who is a thinking person can ask, Arjuna did not want to fight. Right? And what is Lord Krishna saying? Go and fight. Is it going against the universal value of ahimsa, non-violence?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, I mean, On the face of it, it is.
Greater purpose.
Yes, on the face of it, it is.
Yeah, it's for a larger benefit of the society.
Exactly, right? So that means what you
It's
said,
not a
the
self-
greater, what did you say? Greater purpose, larger benefit of the society. So please understand that is only as far as I know. I mean, right now the modern ethics incorporates all these dilemmas. But in the traditional teaching, Vedic teaching was the first one to say that even though the laws of dharma are universal, universal means everybody senses it in their psyche, okay? They are not absolute. At times, they require interpretation. Okay? Simple example, okay? Very simple example. Let's say during the Second World War, you are in Germany, okay? And one Jew is hiding, and you've given a shelter to one Jew in your home. Nazi police comes, knocks on your door and asks, okay, is there any, are you hiding somebody? What would you say?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Is it really the truth? No. Right? So, exactly. So that means if you just look at what you are saying, that is your lie.
That is good.
But
It's not just black and white.
Exactly. Right? So the whole Vedic dharma shows you that generally our understanding of dharma is black and white. Okay? Total extremes. Okay? This is right, this is wrong. We don't use our mind to see the subtlety and what is required in that given situation and what does greater good. Okay? So therefore, this Vedic view of dharma is, if you say no, then what? Are you going to be punished by law of dharma? No.
Then they know hard and fast
understand.
rules also.
Yeah, so now we will analyze this a little bit further, right? So we have to take many different scenarios. Okay, because this is one example to just show you the fact that there is no such thing called black and white. There are a lot of gray areas. What is the skill now? The skill is to interpret it correctly, because the minute you say that it is subject to interpretation, there are two possibilities. One possibility is that you interpret it correctly and use it for larger good, right? Or you can do it for your own benefit, right? Human mind is so, and justified, right? Human mind is so creative, right? You do something and you always find some reason to justify your actions. Okay? So, but you may justify, but the laws are operating. You can't fool the laws. Right? So now, what is your interest? Your interest is to interpret it as accurately as possible so that you are on which side of dharma? Right side of dharma. And not through your interpretations and justifications you are not on the wrong side of dharma. Because if you are on the wrong side of dharma, law of dharma will take care, right? And you will suffer. Okay? So now you have this whole big skill of interpreting dharma. Okay? Now Mahabharata itself gives you series of examples of if you interpret dharma without looking at the overall context and just one dimension of dharma, then you can go on to what? The wrong side of dharma. We will see a few examples. Okay? The first example, there are three major examples. Okay? One is Bhishma. Bhishma had taken a vow that he will protect whoever is what? The king of Hastinapura. Okay? So he had taken this vow, and what happened? Who happened to be the king of Hastinapura? Duryodhana. And he took the kingdom by all wrong means, and he was just being very adharmic. in the way he was taking away and how he was conducting himself. Okay? Now, Bhishma stuck to what? Very unidimensional view of dharma. That I have taken a vow to protect whoever is the king of Hastinapura. He did not see the larger picture. Okay? If he had seen the larger picture, what would he have said? He would have interpreted. What he would have said, that yes, I have taken a vow, but this person has taken the kingdom through wrong means. I have no obligation to protect him. If he had not followed his vow, because he had a larger good in mind, then the law of dharma would have been on his side. Now here what happened? Through this interpretation, which side of dharma he got into? The wrong side, and he died. He had to pay for it. Okay? That is the first example of need to interpret dharma. The second example is Karna. Karna. Okay? Karna had this whole feeling of inferiority complex because he always was Arjuna and all said you are not a Kshatriya. So he had a huge complex because he had all these skills, right? And then he did not get enough recognition from Pandavas. Duryodhana was an opportunist. He detected the talent and he also saw what is dissatisfaction. So he said, now this person can be of great help to me. So what did he do? He took him in confidence and then what? Started nourishing his ego. Whatever he lacked, he gave him importance. He gave him recognition. So all that is something that he needed. He needed very badly. Okay? Once he got what he was really lacking, then what? His loyalty towards Duryodhana became what? Unshakable. Okay? Then, when that, he was assessing the situation only from the standpoint of what Duryodhana has done for me. Okay? He did not see how Duryodhana is as a character as a whole. And that's what established his what? Unflinching loyalty towards Duryodhana. In the end, before the war, Lord Krishna tells him the reality about who he is. Okay? Still, what does he say? Why? The decision was made from only one standpoint, that he has been good to me, right? And I cannot let him down. If we had seen the larger picture, yes, he has been good to me, but how is he as a person as a whole? His decision could be different. Okay?
This actually, unfortunately, we do a lot in our own lives.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the person is good to me.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't-
nice to me, why should I go there?
Exactly. And this is absolutely logic. This whole Mahabharata is a reflection of human mind. Right? How we assess situations and how we make decisions. Absolutely. It's just human mind. Okay? And these stories give us an insight into what we do and what we should be doing. Really, it's an ingenious, this whole analysis of characters in Mahabharata is ingenious. Okay? What is even the bigger beauty is, even though we see that they made wrong decisions, how do we look upon Bhishma? As somebody who was confused? We still look upon him as what? Yeah, exalted person, because it takes a lot of sacrifice, right, to live by what you believe in, right? So you see the complexity of this whole human growth. Okay? So you, on one hand, that person can have amazing characteristics, okay? And on the other hand, or the same person can at times be misguided. So what is our attempt?
Look at the larger picture. No?
Yeah. So our thing is that yes, that character has something which are exalted. We don't want to totally dismiss the person, but we don't fall into the same trap that the person fell into.
Yeah.
without naming the person. See, generally we have a tendency, not only with reference to dharma we have black and white, with reference to our assessment of human beings, we also have what? Black and white. Either we think this is a good person or we think what?
Bad.
This is a bad person. Here what is the nuance? This person can be highly exalted, but
he even has
exactly can be misguided. This is proper analysis of anyone in this universe. There is no human being who is only bad, and there is no human being who is only good. This is a fact. Okay? Our teacher used to say that a serial criminal, okay, will still show compassion towards one's own child.
Yeah.
He may be shooting, but when his own child cries, so that means there is no such thing that he is totally devoid of compassion. Okay? But his confusion is so large that most of his decisions are taken from what? Confusion. But you can't label. He says, our teacher used to say, you can't label any individual as criminal. You can say, this person has taken to crime. This person has taken to crime is a fact. It's a fact. But this person is a criminal means what? Only that. That means this is like, a stat that every 24 hours in the day is committing a crime. These are subtle but very significant understandings. These are subtle, but it can change your life. If you begin to see the totality of the individual without falling into judgments, if you see the totality of yourself without falling into judgments, then what? You are just being alive. You gain subtle mind. You have a subtle mind. And then the analysis that you do of any given situation and what is required on your part becomes all highly subtle. Until then, you just have all these gross generalizations which don't correspond to realities. Okay? The third example we saw, and that is of what? In Mahabharata, Draupadi. Draupadi, what happens to her? Okay? When Vastaha, exactly. When Yudhishthira loses the game of dice and he starts what? Gambling everything, he gambles the whole thing, and then also his wife. Then his wife was brought and everybody, Draupadi was the only one who was vocal. She was not timid or anything. She asked the court, she says, who did Yudhishthira lose first? He lost himself first or he lost me first? So this is no, he lost himself first. Says, exactly. If he lost himself first, then he is already a slave. How can a slave beg somebody else? He has no right. He is not a king anymore because he is lost. Okay. She asked, hey, look at this dharma. Everybody was sitting in that court. In that court was what? Not only Pandava, all her husbands, and also Bhishma. Everybody was there. Nobody said a word except for maybe one person, Vidur. Yeah, Vidur did. Okay. Everybody else's interpretation of dharma was what? Yudhishthira had a free will. He had a choice whether to gamble or not to gamble. He used his free will to gamble and gamble away everything. Now what? What can I do? This was the stand because it was dharma, because he had a free will. Now if he misuses his free will, he has to pay for it. That was the stand of everyone. Nobody stood up, only Vidur. What did Vidur say? His picture was a larger picture. What did he say? How can you let this happen? You are all sitting here. You can't let this happen because there is huge dharma there. Yudhishthir did what he did and he has to pay for it. But you are sitting here, your dharma is what? To protect this innocent woman. But still people did not do it. Then who helped? Lord Krishna. Okay? Because again, how was he looking at dharma? The larger picture. The larger picture is that the innocent Draupadi has to be protected. Okay? So this is what it shows, that when you become a mature person, how do you begin to interpret? The interpretation of dharma requires skill. It requires that you look at the larger good. If you are doing it to protect the overall dharma, that interpretation is something which is part of what maturity. It is wise living. You need to live with wisdom. Okay? But if your interpretations fall into what person gains, then you end up on the other side of dharma, and law of dharma will apply against you. So this is when you see the intricacies of dharma. Okay? Dharma is absolute, is universal but not absolute. Now look at modern life situation. Okay? A modern life situation, when we talk about dharma, invariably, hopefully now India would have changed. There was one time in India that you can't do a business unless you bribe people. Okay? So you have a choice of either not doing business at all or what? Somehow giving some bribe. Because otherwise you just say that I can't do anything. So what should we do? This is a very, very common question people ask. Because you are living within a system, and the system itself is so distorted and so corrupt, and you have to work, you can't just fight the system, you don't have the capacity. Okay? Now, what should you do?
There's no hard and fast rule.
Exactly.
Depends on your.
Absolutely. Because if you expect me to give an answer, it's very difficult. Because each situation is different. Okay? How much you are just trying to yourself circumvent certain things, right? The answer lies is it's situation specific. The rule is you try your best first to go by dharma as a first recourse. Okay? When ask yourself, have I tried to go by dharma all the way till the time that I have no other possibilities of following dharma? Because generally what happens, you yourself, even without trying to follow dharma, you decide, this is not going to work anyway. So you don't even try enough to follow dharma, and you say, anyway the system is like this and it will not work. Make sure that you have taken some concrete steps to follow dharma. Try to see how it works. When you find a total impasse, then think about some other options. But as a rule, start following dharma first. Okay? Worry about when there is a complete block, what is your next choice? Okay? Because most of the time it's like this, that everybody is doing it, let me do it. You have not even made enough effort, whether it is the exam, or it is getting admission, or it is getting jobs, or it is, whole life. We just try to what? Shortcuts everywhere. And those shortcuts, we think we are very smart, but they have a cost. Guilt. And underachievement, right? Because, the questions are asked to test how well you are thinking. If you want to enter US universities, right? What do they want to test?
Integrity.
Your integrity, your thinking capacity, they want to develop that. Okay? Now what are you doing? Just outsourcing it to somebody else.
From my skills is that you're trying to get please.
They want you to become what? That refined human being.
Yeah. But now the University of Buddha is very smart. No? 2-3 kids were sent back because the essays did not match
You see?
their grade works there.
Exactly. They are very smart.
Like a big one like Brown sent 3 kids back, saying that listen, how do you manage to come? You
Exactly.
can't write as well as your essay said.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Right? So that means they want to know you. And you are not. Presenting yourself is not at all who you are. So that means if you want to get in there, what? This is an opportunity for you to develop your thinking to the extent that you can match the requirements. That whole challenge of life is what? Evolve and evolve and evolve and what? To become that person who is outstanding. Okay. So this is what is the whole thing about interpretation of karma. Interpretation of karma means don't take the easy way out. Follow karma, because in that following of karma, not only the development of your personality, your integrity, your character, but also your intellectual growth. If you are committed to that, you are a person to be reckoned with. Nobody can shake you. There is this, you don't need to worry about self-esteem and all of that. You have a naturally healthy self-esteem. You automatically get over problems of jealousy, smallness, envy. All this will go drop. You don't need to attend workshops on how to get rid of my jealousy, 10 steps to getting rid of jealousy. You don't need to. Very basic, very subtle. Okay? So this is how you use your free will, karmasu kaushala. Okay? If you have done that, now sometimes what happens is when you have been highly skillful, you have used your free will very effectively, okay, to make right choices, does it mean that the results are always going to be in keeping with what you want? No. Right? So the previous verse, which is 48, it says what? Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Okay? So that means you have taken all your precautions, you have used all your wisdom, right, to use your faculty of free will in the most responsible manner. That is your job. You can't shy away from that responsibility. Okay? But there is second thing, in order to be a mature human being, you also have to understand that when you do that, doesn't mean that everything will happen your way. So therefore, there is still a possibility that there is siddhi and asiddhi. So that means either you will get what you want or you may not get.
Or even better.
Sorry?
Or even better than what you said.
Exactly. So that means siddhi and asiddhi, as Rajiv says, we say there are 4 possibilities. With reference to result of action, there are 4 possibilities. Okay? One is equal to what you expect. The second is even better than what you expect. Many times people say, oh, I don't even know what I have done to get to this place.
And
Really? Yeah, exactly.
I'm making a
Absolutely. So
My wife.
many times you feel, and I've just been, there's many very successful human beings, and you sometimes ask them, like, what accounts? They say, actually, I don't quite know, I was just doing things and there were big breakthroughs. I felt that I was in the right place at the right time. Opportunities came. I took on those opportunities. Things have been good for me. Right? So that means there is always also a possibility of getting more. Sometimes you're born in a family which is very wealthy. They have resources. Or you're born in a family which is very intelligent. All these are resources. Not only wealth, please understand. Okay? You You are born in a family where there are excellent human relations. It can be very simple family. And you grow up with so much emotional, security, and you naturally have proper values. Giving, caring. This is a lot of punya. Don't think that it is only in terms of money, wealth, physical. That is one way that you have an advantage. There are many other ways in which you can have advantage. Okay? So it's more than what you expect. Then it is at times less than what you expect. Okay? Or there is a fourth possibility, and that is what? Opposite of what you expect. Completely different from what you expect. Okay. I think few months ago I heard that somebody had gone to Maldives for a holiday, and the husband and wife had gone jogging and gone. And the wife was behind and husband was ahead, and then there was a crowd. And then when she went and saw what happened, he collapsed and
a young
died.
38-year-old.
38-year-old died.
I think one of the classic examples is a guy who goes to catch a bus.
Yes, this is what Swamiji gives, right? A guy who goes to catch the bus, either what? He's on the other side of the road, he crosses the road and he gets the bus equal.
Which is what he wanted to do.
Which is what he wanted to do. Okay? While he's crossing the road, he sees his friend passing by in a car and gets a lift more than what he expects. Okay? Then he crosses the road but misses the bus.
Misses the bus.
Less. And the fourth is, while crossing, he falls down and he hurts himself. Okay. Opposite of what he expects. Life is this. More, equal, less, opposite. There is not one human being who has not experienced all these four. Not one. If you define success by your capacity to get equal and more. Rajiv last time said 20% of the time people get equal and more. So that means what? Even if you increase, there are some people who say, no, 20 is too less. We are quite successful at 50%. Even 50%, that means what? Half. That means success lies not only, of course, first is using your free will to get what you want and more. That is lovely. You have to work for it. Nobody works for the other two. Okay? But even if I have not worked for it, it comes to me. How do I respond to those situations? The success also lies in how, when things don't happen my way, when it is less or opposite, how am I going to what?
Acceptance.
How am I going to respond to these situations? Because if you don't learn that, then what happens? Only ethic will not make you the full person. If you want to use karma for your full growth, you need to take care of both. While performing action, take into consideration karma, and while receiving the result of the action, have some equality. Okay. Now, how does one have equality? First of all, what does it mean to have equality? Okay. So what we say that, okay, now if I accept, who said? Now accept those situations, then what? This is what we call equality. Okay. Now what does it mean I accept the situation? Does it mean that I have absolutely no reaction at all? When things are a little less and things are opposite, the person, the wife who sees her husband just in Maldives in vacation, just going, it's just like, okay, 4 results happen and this is the 4th possibility and I have to have equality. Can you live your life like that? You can't. Right? Otherwise, you will be like robotic. what Gita says is something far more profound. Okay? What it says is, when that happens, certain amount of sadness is inevitable. It is inevitable. There is no human being which can avoid that sadness. If you try to avoid the sadness, you are against laws of Ishvara. Laws of Ishvara is such that you have range of emotions, and different emotions are evoked in different situations. When you go for a wedding, you are going to be what? In a mood of happiness, pleasure, all that. And when you go to a funeral, what? You are going to be sad. We are not asking you to be exactly the same in two situations. That means we are making you like into a robot. What Gita says is, you are given different emotions to what? For different situations. This is the range of human emotions. You are born. Your human brain, you go and see any psychiatrist, you go and see any psychologist, anybody who cannot experience this different range of emotions. That person, that psychiatrist, this person is abnormal. Okay? Emotions are part of Ishvara's design. Okay? Now, where is maturity?
Emotions are happy.
Am I managing my emotions or emotions are managing me? It's the same situation of desire. Desire as such is not bad. If I let the desire govern me, which makes me go against universal value, then only desire becomes a problem. Emotions are healthy. You are meant to feel them. Different emotions which are appropriate for different situations. Okay? But if emotions start totally take over you and are the only guiding force for making the decision, when you lose the bigger picture, then what? Those emotions you have to do what? Take care and manage them properly. This is what we call maturity. This is what we call samatva. You must understand what samatva means. Because if you think samatva means no emotions, no sadness, no fears, no anger, you are setting yourself up for something that you will never achieve. Then you will say, I am not spiritual. Okay? That means, let's say that situation produces some sadness. What are you going to do with this sadness? You have a choice. Either you can what? Keep on going into it, why me and why did it happen to me, and just poor me, and that whole life is not fair, and I am a victim, and that whole thing. And then what? You make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and your whole life is guided by one predominant thought. That thought takes over in everything you do. That is a choice that you have. What is the other choice? That has happened. I am sad. Let me grieve. Let me grieve. Because that grieving is also part of what? Getting better.
It's like healing.
It's a healing process. Right? First acknowledge that. Don't blame yourself for it. Let it all come out. Because it has to come out. It cannot but come out. And then I said, okay, now this grieving, and maybe I will feel the loss for the rest of my life. It is unavoidable. But am I going to now, what I still have how many years to live? Am I just going to be, one event of my life is going to dictate how I am going to feel for the rest of my life? I have certain things that I can do to heal myself. Initially, after the period of grieving, many people I have seen, they have done some amazing things. Amazing things. Just recently I was invited for a wedding and I met somebody from a very very well-known family. And I think her husband passed away, and after that she was moved to South. And she told me the kind of work she is doing, it is just amazing. How many people she has helped, unprivileged children, in education, healthcare, overall development, providing employment for a group of women, and you can see shine in her eyes. She's simple, she's elegant, she stands up. She's not wearing all these chamak and all these things, but her presence says something. And she has gone through difficulties in life, but you can say that this woman has somehow, obviously she says that my husband was a very charitable person, so I'm carrying it forward. So that means the memory stays. Please don't try to eradicate the memory. Because memory and that person and that importance of that person in your life, you cannot forget and you should not forget. But how do you use it constructively now? To what? Use your talents, not only to heal yourself, but to benefit others. Okay? These choices you always have. If you don't exercise those choices, don't blame the universe. If you choose to remain within your cocoon and your thought processes and keep on expanding them further, which are not self-enhancing, who is to blame? So this is what samatvam means. After having taken care, acknowledging the emotion, taking enough care to express it without denying it, okay, you then think of what are the constructive ways that I can live my life, which is of something which is of significance to me and to others. Once you do that, all your emotions are what? Put in perspective. You become master of your emotions. Emotions don't take you for a ride. Same thing about fear. Okay? If you think that I will totally eliminate fear in my life, it is not true. Sometimes, in fact, even in psychology, you distinguish between two different types of fear. One is what we call instinctual fear. You see, you are at night and you see some 4 or 5 Buddhas coming, and Buddhas, I don't want to say the word Buddhas, but little difficult men, and you are walking alone as a woman on the street. What will you do?
You imagine.
No, one thing is you imagine that you take enough precaution. That is a wise thing to do. Which is the emotion which is giving you the signal that, hey, you better take precaution? Fear. You need that. Imagine if you did not have that feeling of fear, what will happen? You will actually just walk here when the car is coming and you'll stand there. Fear is needed because that is an instinct that what makes you protect. It is for self-preservation. Don't label any emotion as negative. Please stop that thing. Positive emotion, negative emotion. Hey, every emotion is Ishvara's creation. It has a purpose, right? But it can be distorted. What is your job? Whenever that distortion sets in, you address that. That is how to live a mature life. Okay? So that means that instinctual fear, if you are trying to eliminate what you are actually, you will go crazy actually. There is other thing which is what we call psychological fear. Psychological fear means what? That even if the situation has not happened, you assume, you imagine, right? You imagine and you suffer from what? Not the situation but your imagination. So that means there is no reality there. Right? That is something that you need to address because there is no corresponding external situation. You are suffering from your mental imagination. Okay. This is the fear that you need to handle. This is what we call samatha.
Isn't that fear also in a way good, that you have a negative fear, that you're worried that okay, this might happen, so you
Yeah.
take precautions that that does not happen?
Excellent, right? So this is something that one thing is that you have certain amount of, you're right, certain amount of fear to say, okay, now this may happen, right? Then you can take an action, very constructive action to say now, okay, now if this is a possibility, how can I avoid it? That also is healthy, okay? But if you don't take enough action and you just imagine it, you don't even take appropriate action, or you over-assess that fear,
The negative.
the negative, then you are not in line, even your actions are not in line. So accurately assessing the risks, that is not fear, it's risks. Okay? And then taking proactive actions is again very healthy. There is this thing about there is,
This one. So
Yes.
procrastination comes from fear?
now there are many different reasons for procrastination. So when there is procrastination that one feels that I am doing, one need to ask oneself, now why am I not?
Fear of making a choice? Or-
Yeah, exactly. So there can be so many different reasons. One is that, just basically it is difficult, so you don't want to deal with it. So what? The easiest thing. Anytime,
Yeah.
what? Even Rajiv, that procrastination is not only with reference to work. Okay? What happens is, somebody says something that you don't like or do, what do? Most of the time,
Not addressed.
not address it.
Don't want to come
Right.
and talk about it. Let it be.
Exactly. Why don't we address it?
We don't want to take a stand, no?
Exactly. We
We
don't
want
want
to
to
unpleasant.
address it exactly. Right? Because you imagine, right, that if I express my displeasure, to what will happen? It will create some conflict, or it will create some unpleasant exchanges, and you want to avoid doing that. Okay? So therefore, you choose to keep quiet. Okay? What happens is, by keeping quiet, does that thing go away?
That's right.
That is also procrastination. Please understand. Because you are choosing not to deal with it at that given point in time, over a period of time, what happens? That same thing keeps multiplying. And at one point in a human relationship, this is the reality. Okay? At one point, it becomes too much for you to hold, because you have just been shoving it and shoving it and shoving it, and it's all there. Because you are shoving it doesn't mean it goes away. What happens? Outburst. You explode. Okay? So that means this outburst is a result of procrastination. You have to learn how to express your displeasure also. We have only black and white. Either I totally keep quiet, or I have outbursts. There is this whole in-between spectrum which is available to me, which we don't use. How to communicate, but what? Communicate, there is this very nice book which is called Non-Violent Communication. You have to deal with things which are not pleasant in life. You can't avoid it. And a lot of these things which are not pleasing you, you have to address through communication. But you have to communicate in a way which is constructive and not what? Destructive way of communication. That art you have to learn. This is also what? Not procrastinating.
But it will work.
I said a violent book.
By the hard work.
But I think some people just out of sheer lazy, there are lazy people also.
We are not talking about, say, if you want to use karma for your growth, how do you do it? Right? We are not talking about generally how people are and what they are and what they are doing. That's true. All of us are also included in
Yeah.
that. Okay? what we are saying is if you are interested in your growth, this is what you should be learning about. Right? So the whole focus is you, yourself. Okay? Because many of these things we ourselves don't do.
And we recognize why we don't.
Right? That requires analysis. Because otherwise Gita only becomes what Upadesha, oh, you should be like this and you should be, that doesn't get you anywhere. You need to have an insight into human mind. You need to see how we human beings are, include us, and how we can become finer and finer in our choices and in our responses. This is what Gita is talking about. Okay. So now, I think, is this enough for today? Okay. So now, there are two aspects that Karma Yoga to talk about. One is the choices and the other one is the responses. Okay. Now there is one more understanding which helps you to have equanimity, and what is that understanding I will talk about next time.
Karma phala.
That karma phala, and where does it come from? What governs those results of actions which come to me? One is my response, the second is why. Why those situations come to me? Some kind of an insight into what governs this. Okay, that will be seen next time.
You said Raga Dvesha, Raga is a...
Raga is what you like, and Dvesha is what you dislike.
Okay, and what are the desires, good desires and bad desires?
So that is, in fact, we are not saying desires. When you like something, it is raga. When you dislike something, it is called dvesha.
What are vasanas in there?
No, vasana we don't use. So I don't know, somebody else uses, but you, I don't.
So if my
because
desire...
people, one thing is value, because there are so many people who are teaching Vedanta, they use that terminology for which I have no idea what they mean. Because the way we are taught, it's all crystal clear. Okay? Now, there is no such word called vasana as far as I see in Gita. So if people are using it, you need to ask them, because I don't. And I can't answer what they think, because I don't know what they think.
If desire becomes an addiction.
What we are saying is, what I told you is, if the desire occupies such a strong place in my mind, then what happens? I sacrifice with resolution. This is what we call
Actually, Vasi.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know
probably
what they
addressing.
are. We call them binding desires. Desires which bind me. Desires which bind me because I have no capacity to manage those desires effectively.
So there's nothing like an undesirable desire.
Undesirable desire means it is something that obviously if you desire bad of somebody.
If you're walking on the road and you desire to rape a woman, what you call that?
Exactly.
There's no caption for it.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is,
Not just a person who's addicted to drugs, suppose. No, that's an addiction. That's a
Yeah.
desire.
yeah. So that means
Desire,
you are
that's an
Again,
so
not able to manage.
exactly.
Another
There
desire
are
is not
different
able to
degrees.
manage.
Now, I think what Raji, what you are saying is, when you say that you can't manage your desires, desires have what? Certain power over you when you disregard what is right and wrong. How much they have taken over you, there are degrees. Okay? Sometimes a desire, even if it has taken over you, you are thinking about it and all, but still when you perform an action, you don't do something wrong.
So there's only like sattvic desire and good desire and bad desire.
All this,
These are okay.
I mean, I think don't impute on all these. We have read many things and people talk about Gita in so many different ways. This is a traditional way of thinking which is crystal clear. Okay? Onto this, if you add so many different ideas of different people of whom I don't know what they mean and all, it becomes complex. Try to understand, because if you understand what really Lord Krishna is saying, I tell you there is just nothing but clarity. Because onto this clarity, if you impute some thousands of concepts, you yourself will think yourself through to make it unclear for you. So therefore, all these ideas exist, but I don't know what people do. I have no idea. But this is one thing I can show you, that this is not what Krishna is talking about. There is a chapter which is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. We will see, it will all come. It all comes. But there is this whole analysis, right? So we have chosen about 45 different verses and it all comes. But when I say something, please listen to it, because whenever you have listened to something else, one of the biggest challenges is, and this is how it is, right? That automatically comes. And then what happens? If you take this and you try to match what you hear now with that. Okay? Now, what that person is saying, first of all, I don't know. How much that person has understood,
How much we've understood.
and how much you have, I don't know. Okay? So that way we work ourselves to conclusion when actually things are quite analytical and quite easy to understand. So stick to this. It will really help you because it is brilliant. Okay? And those other things, they will sort out themselves. Okay? And we don't need new words. We don't need words of how does, whether you call it desire or vasana, what difference does it make? Tell me. Once you have understood that either I manage desires or desires manage me, and those desires, the extent to which they manage me can be what? From simple managing to addiction. There is a range of how much they manage me. So that means then that is the extent to which they manage me. If it has reached addiction, then what? I'm really actively destroying myself. How much it has taken over me. So that means I have no choice but to manage my desires with a proper perspective. And the only way to do it is to bring dharma. Bring dharma in mind, because if you are letting desires run you, you are acting against dharma. Who are you destroying? You are destroying yourself. This particular understanding you can replace with any word. You don't, the understanding is important. The process of understanding all this is very important. So, Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate